Welcome to Tuesday Talks with Shawnee Alliance Church. Each week, we gather to discuss how being a follower of Jesus impacts our everyday lives. Whether you have been a believer for a long time or still have lots of questions about faith, we would love to have you join us as we embrace the joy of a transformed life. Welcome back to another week of Tuesday Talks. My name is Bridgett, and today on the podcast, I have Kris Browning.
Hello.
Hello. It's like Mrs. Doubtfire. Hello. Oh my gosh. All right. Well, today on the podcast, besides laughing and giggling, we are going to be talking about the art. What did I call it?
I don't know, but I didn't like this title very much. I really wanted to push back on the title.
Oh,
You said Art of Disagreement.
The Art of Disagreement.
I'm not too fond of that. I'd like to really push back in a loving way
I
against your idea.
would love to know how you came to that decision.
Isn't it great? We have all the pop psychology in the world about how to do this stuff. You know what it's called? Manipulation. Mm-hmm. I hate that. There's real ways biblically to disagree and to do it well.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about this today. It can kind of be on any topic, but specifically around the topic of faith. I feel like from the age of apologetics, pushing on some territory here, we've trained Christian robots on how to give the right answer and how to prove people wrong and how to quote Bible verses without actually honoring people and where they are in their faith journey, whether or not they're believers or not. And so today I want to have Kris in this conversation to talk about how do we actually honor people without, what's the word I'm looking for?
Being a terrible person.
Without being a terrible person, but without being like, oh, it's okay, like, your sin's fine. What's the word?
Sure.
Whatever that word is.
Sure, yeah. You don't want to be just, well, and let me say it like this. We sold out evangelism to make it about us instead of about Jesus. When we try to prove our brand instead of point people toward Jesus, we're getting it wrong. Okay, and you will absolutely notice, there's certainly Paul who's going to stand up and he's going to talk about the unknown God, but he's not going to take it on and say, you're all so wrong in everything you've ever said. Yeah. He's going to acknowledge you have tried to worship the true God. Right? And that's why you've built all these things. That's why you've worshipped all these idols. And yet you even recognize you didn't quite get it right. So you put up this monument to the unknown God. But I tell you that I know this God. Yeah. So let's take Paul's example here. And instead of saying, well, let me tell you, you dirty, rotten sinner, instead to acknowledge that people are trying to get it right. This is a big part of being able to disagree without being a disagreeable person and just a real nasty person to try to get along with. To recognize there are intelligent people who disagree with you, there are people who love Jesus who disagree with you, and there are people who want to do well by their family, by their faith system, whatever it is, and they're not going to agree. We're not going to say it's okay that you're on the highway to hell. Instead, what we're going to say is, I love you, and I'd love to have a relationship with you, and that's going to start with listening to you. And it's amazing. So you're right. Evangelism apologetics became about us proving our systematic theology instead of pointing people to Jesus. And our Sunday school teaches anything. It teaches Jesus is the answer. So let's start with intent.
Yeah.
When we're getting into, and I don't care if this is apologetics, I don't care if this is in the workplace or with your family, let's start with the intent. A lot of people who are drawn to apologetics, when I was first introduced, by the way, apologetics is essentially the study and defense of your faith, okay? So it's, in other words, saying, I'm going to defend Christendom. It started with very grand things, writings to emperors who are, Christians used to get a really bad rap. People misunderstood communion. They thought we were baking infants in bread and then eating them.
Correct.
So, yeah, well, we had to deal with that. So we wrote some letters and said that's not what we do. We were told that we were the reason that the Roman Empire wasn't doing well. And we said, well, I don't know why you think that, because we are supporting our fellow citizens. We're supporting our government as far as we can. And we're the ones going off into the wilderness to rescue children that you've left behind. We're the ones saving Rome. So from its very nature, it was, very argumentative, but it was in defense of misunderstanding. that we're going to show you what we actually believe. We turned it into instead, well, you have to follow this system and say these words. That's not what Jesus tells us. Jesus says that, he wants this relationship, that he wants to be in a relationship with us, that he came so that we who are spiritually sick would be healed by him. Point him to Jesus, not my theology, and I can point him to scripture. But again, if someone looks at me and says, well, I don't believe the Bible is authoritative. Now, they won't say that. They're going to say, well, what makes the Bible special over the Quran or the teachings of Buddha or whatever? Well, I can argue the validity of the Bible, or I can point them to Jesus. So when I'm disagreeing with someone and we're disagreeing over the fundamentals of faith, either I'm disagreeing with someone who God has put under my care as a pastor. I'm allowed to be confrontational. I have to be loving, but I'm allowed to confront those beliefs and say, I believe this is an error. Let us study this together. If I'm trying to share my faith, I'm not going to get into an argument with you. I'm going to point you toward Jesus. Well, can I share what Jesus says about this? Well, can I share how Jesus has shown me this in my life? And again, my goal in telling my story isn't to show me, is to show Jesus and how he's worked in me. To me, that's not even a disagreement. I can make it into one, but why would I? Why not just point them toward the master?
Yeah. So just clarifying here. So let's take a silly example. Let's say that I come into your office and I say, Kris, I'd like to talk to you about colored pens. I think that using rainbow-colored markers are the only way that you can fill out reports. And if you write with a pencil, I will be very upset with you. Can you tell me what you think about on that?
Sure.
So because you talked about intention. I'm coming in. I actually don't care why you think a pencil is better. I'm coming in already under the understanding that me and my rainbow-colored markers are way better, and you're foolish for using a pencil.
But I care about you. And when you walk in my office, because that is a silly example, but let's play it out, okay? And you make that an issue, there's something wrong.
Yeah.
Now, I might have disrespected you by using green. We're going to play this example out. You may have been wounded in your past and you need rainbows, okay? Something might have happened, but I care about you, okay? So I'm going to disagree. So in that example, I'm going to say, and by the way, what are most people's responses? You can't tell me what to do. I'm my own snowflake. Listen, yes, I'm unique and I'm wonderful and you can't tell me what to write with, but that's not productive, okay? First of all, so I care about you. So I'm going to ask, okay, why do you feel so strongly? And 9 times out of 10 is not going to have anything to do with what we're about to argue about. It's going to have something to do with, well, I couldn't read your reports and I can't do my job if I can't read your reports well. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, well, hey, I'm not going to write in. What else can I do so that you can have what you need to be? Because that's a big deal. Or it could be, well, I despised yellow. You know what? I love you, so I will choose in this way to say, okay, well, I won't fill it out in yellow anymore. Or it could be, well, actually, I need to redirect this. And I need to say, I thank you for, first of all, I'm going to hear you out, not excessively, okay? Because I also need to honor, my own mental health, and I need to honor the amount of time that God has given me on this world. And there is a time to stop the conversation. But I want to hear you out. And if it really is that you are just childish and you just want your way, then I'm going to confront and we're going to disagree. And I'm going to say, thank you so much for sharing that with me. I want to respect what you've said, but I will not be changing this. And that, again, that's not going to be a disagreement. But if I can give a counterexample, some of the amazing disagreements that you and I have had that didn't turn into long, drawn-out things, where I ask a question, hey, where is this coming from? What's behind this? And your honesty to be able to say, well, I'm not quite sure, and to be able to walk through those processes. But if someone comes to me, let's take even our staff meetings, which I love using for examples, because I think people, if they had a camera in there, would be very surprised. We disagree a lot, not just you and I, but the staff as a whole. Yeah. So if we have a disagreement about how to do something, my goal is to walk out of that room with the best idea. This is true in my family. This is true when I share my faith. And by the way, when I share my faith with other Christians that I think are a little off, okay, I would like to say that I'm always 100% right in my understandings. But you know what? I have absolutely been taken to task and changed my understanding, not because they took me away from the gospel, but because they clarified a point. I have mentors in my life that they disagree with me, and I respect that, and I want to learn more. But let's take this example. If we're arguing about an idea, first of all, do I have the emotional health to carry my ideas in a bucket? I don't own my ideas. They're ideas, and I just carry them in a bucket. Why am I fighting? Am I fighting to be right? Then I'm already wrong. Okay? I don't have to be right. If you are the CEO of Browning Inc., you don't have to be right. In fact, if you're a good leader, you have put people around you who know more than you about a lot of things, and your gut intuition might be wrong a lot. And you have surrounded okay. So at the very least, if I disagree with you, if you say yellow and I say blue, and we talk that out respectfully, at the very least, you've gotten me to buy in if I'm fully wrong. You know what, Bridgett? I see the benefits. You're right. Morale around here is low. We better use all the sparkly colors we can. Okay, you've won me over, and I'm now on your side. It's also very possible we're going to come up with a better idea that isn't either of ours. We're gonna go for color choice, and everyone gets to choose their colors, and we're going to respect that, and we're going to be a happier people. Or we're going to refine your idea. You're right, we can do it this way, but I think if we make these little tweaks, we can do it better. And that's where 90% of our ideas in staff meeting end up, right? Yeah. Is that somebody throws something out, somebody throws out, a refinement, somebody throws out something silly, and we kind of lovingly walk it back, and then we refine it, refine it, refine it. And that's why when we go to look for who to give credit for, a lot of times, who do we give credit for? To? Well, first of all, it's Jesus. Like, if he's really inspiring our thought process. But this is no longer owned by any one person. We've made it something great. Apply that to your family, all right? If you and your spouse are arguing about finances, if you're trying to be right, you're already wrong. If you're trying to find the best idea, that could be her idea, it could be his idea, it could be a refinement of someone's idea, or it could be a third idea. If you're doing that in your workplace, and here's the beautiful thing. If you can develop, and you can only help this for yourself, the emotional maturity to be in full disagreement, to be fully engaged in a disagreement, and to walk away fully loving those people you disagreed with.
Absolutely.
And I remember I represented an idea from our staff recently to our elder board. And I was fully honest. I said, everyone in the room disagreed with me. So I really think we need to go with this idea. I actually was thinking along these lines. I'm really not sold yet. I think either way could work, but they were definitively with idea B. So I really want to push idea B here today. And I think they respected that because they saw the trust that I had in our team, and they're able to say, okay, yeah, it doesn't have to be my idea.
I want to talk about a two-part question. I want to talk about number one, because you've kind of hit on it. I want to talk about relational authority.
Okay.
And who are we allowing? Because we will just have people in our life that just want to start an argument, and I think sometimes we get distracted because we give them too much authority in our life. And I want to talk about social media's influence on this topic. So who are the people that are actually healthy to allow them into the sacred space that are allowed to give us feedback or allowed to push us?
So if you are a complete stranger, I am still going to give you the benefit of the doubt to say, well, tell me more. Why are you feeling that way? Why do you think that? Total stranger, you just have the same amount of love and respect that I give all of God's creation. I'm going to start there. That is my personal choice. I have the time. I have the emotional capacity, so I'm going to do that. So I start with an open door. Now, that can be dangerous. Okay, there's a saint, and she's gone on to be with Jesus. So my favorite example is we had a Sunday school teacher here at the church, and she had been a Sunday school teacher for as long as I was alive. And when I came on staff as family life pastor back then, I approached her and I said, "Hey, you're doing a great job. I really love your ministry. Thank you so much. And I'm not going to ask you to do anything different. However, if I can ever be a blessing to you, it would mean the world if you reach out. I would love to be able to bless your ministry." And she looks at me, she says, "Well, you want to hear what I really think?" And I said, "Yes, ma'am, just so long as I don't have to do anything different and we're still friends." And she shared with me, and what she shared with me was, I think the best version of church is when kids are with their parents in the worship service. I actually, in most ways, agree with that. I think obviously there is an age where that could be counterproductive, but I think that if you've got a fifth grader who can be edified in our worship and sit in that service, I think that's beautiful. Now send them to children's church after, that's fine. Send them to youth group as they grow up, because we do want to minister to them that way. We didn't disagree, but I love that I looked her dead in the eyes and I said, "I'm going to fully listen, but this is not me saying I'm going to do what you tell me to do." That's how I start. I'm going to be fully honest with people. I would love to hear what you think, and I'm going to listen to them and say, "Thank you for letting me know." And I'm usually pretty forthright about my actions. I'm not really going to change anything right now, but I'm going to go think on this.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm going to start. Now, if you choose to just be combative and nasty and horrible to me, if you choose to make this a contest of egos instead of ideas, all right, I will give you time to prove that's who you are and what you want to be. If my relational role in your life is as your mentor or your pastor or your friend, I will call you on it. I'll say, "This is coming from an unhealthy place." I'm happy. And I remember I've had interactions where I said, "I'm happy to listen to this on Monday morning. Would you like to set a time to sit down?" Um, but I think for me, the question being, how we deal in those relational authorities, I like to think that for some people, I've earned a place in their life where if I look at them and say, "I think this is coming from an unhealthy place," it'll make them pause. And I have people in my life that's true.
Yeah.
I have people in my life that I've walked up to and I said, "I think this is wrong, and I feel completely morally opposed to this." And they've heard me and they've listened to me and they've changed things. Not that what they were doing, but what our expectations were, So I'm not afraid of those moments, but I'm also going to be really honest that there are some people who just want to start an argument. We were sharing a story about a conflict one of our staff members had where essentially the conflict was just, "I'm going to find something to complain to you about." And he did the perfect thing, which was, "I'm so sorry you feel that way. Have a great day." I cannot please you if you are just going to be dead set on finding something to argue about.
Yeah. And I think for me, what's been really helpful, especially as a people pleaser or a recovering people pleaser, that's not healthy, is having the integrity to say thank you and no, I'm not interested in your feedback. You are not someone that sees the full story. You are not someone that God's put in my life to take care of my heart. And so while I believe that, yeah, you can be coming from a good place, you actually aren't one of the people that God's given me to take care of my heart. And so I'm going to say no. And the fear in my heart that I had to when that person said, "Hey, I'd like to give you feedback on X, Y, and Z," and I was like, "Oh my gosh, am I going to hurt their feelings? Am I wrong? Am I not being submissive? Am I whatever?" And then all of a sudden I just said, "No, I love you. I honor you. Thank you so much. But in this season, God's already given me people that I'm accountable to in this.
Right.
I don't need you to be part of it."
Right. And let me clarify something, that God has created us all uniquely, okay? And so in that situation, the way that I am going to deal with it is going to be different, okay? And now, that being said, in some of those situations, sometimes I get myself in trouble because I get this huge smile on my face and I can't help but say, "That's just the silliest thing I've ever heard." So there are drawbacks to what I do. And that probably gets me into more disagreements, honestly, because I do try to give the benefit of the doubt a little bit further to allow someone to engage me in that. And then again, depending on and sometimes you just can't argue with a fool, right? Well, all the time you can't argue with a fool. And you just say, "Thank you so much, that's it." But let's be really clear that everybody's emotional processing capacity is different. And if you're someone who cannot function easily in conflict, if you're someone who does not live there well, if you're someone whose life experiences has taught you that to be fully gracious and loving to someone means to not engage in that, you need to be true to who God has created you to be. And so I think that for a lot of people, probably more people than not, The healthy thing to do is to be able to say, no, I'm not really interested. Now, if you're working the call center at AT&T and I call you and I say, I need to tell you what I think about, then you are paid to deal with that. But in your personal life, okay, if somebody is going to approach you and is going to tell you this is what you do with your kid, this is what you do in your marriage, and they don't have that honored role in your life, okay, and it's perfectly okay for you to say, I'm not really taking feedback on that part of my life right now, but thank you so much. You know, now again, I'm going to operate a little bit differently. I operate in conflict a lot, and I'm very comfortable there. I like to think I don't seek it out. So I have no problem listening to that and smiling and saying, I'm so glad you told me. Have a great day. And then 5 minutes later, as if I just got done working on my car and I've just washed my hands, it's just gone. There's not a hint of grease under my fingernails on this one. But let me say this, what does get under my skin are the social media things.
Yeah. So let's talk about that for a second. One of the downfalls on social media, and we see this in, I hate to compare it to this, but we also see this with like online dating, is that you can have emotional buy-in without any actual authority or responsibility. And so in the same way, someone can post, they can post a Facebook post about a Christian leader that, had a mental breakdown or an abortion clinic or, some hot topic thing. And all these Christians pour in with all of their, quote a Bible verse and tell these people that they're posting the wrong things. But you've never sat down and had a conversation with this person. You've never sat and you don't know anything about them. And so I've had people ask me like, oh, what do you think about this? And it's like, well, I've never met them.
I will say that in my online, which, I feel so old now with such the young staff that we have, but, I started interacting socially online around 1998. So from 1998 to 2020, I think I have had one healthy disagreement online with a stranger. Mm-hmm. It was beautiful. It was actually about the sanctity of life. Mm-hmm. And it was a couple years ago. I was old enough to know better. And I just really put into a very public place. I said, there seems something incredibly authentic about this comment. I would love to engage with you on this. Please understand. And what I put was, if I truly believe that people are murdering children, then I am morally obligated to do something about it. Okay. Now, all I did was I tried to say, can you understand where I'm coming from? And the most beautiful thing on the internet that's ever happened, mm-hmm. which is they said, I never thought about it like that. I guess if I felt that way, I would have to act the same. Mm-hmm. And we had a beautiful, I have it saved in a place of honor in my storage systems, mm-hmm. because of how meaningful it was to me. Okay. So first of all, if you're going to tell me about that one time that you commented on your uncle's Facebook status and he really did listen, I'm just not interested. What I will say is that for me, I do not think that that's meaningful or life-giving in any way whatsoever. Okay. So let's start with this. If you are looking to change someone's mind over social media, you are on a fool's errand. Mm-hmm. If you are looking to prove someone stupid or wrong on social media, even if you accomplish it, first of all, if you're listening to this podcast, I have certain assumptions about your faith. Mm-hmm. Jesus is not clapping for you saying, way to show that person how wrong they were. Yeah. He's not saying, I'm so glad that instead of sitting over a cup of coffee that you purchased them and sharing your love for them. And first of all, I'm not talking about all the political stuff that people are going to jump to. I'm talking about if someone that you love, that you have a relationship with, is expressing destructive behaviors online, to be able to pull them aside and say, I love you, I'm concerned about this, and I just want you to know I'm here, what can I do? All right, we have an entire generation of veterans who returned from combat, mm-hmm. and this is a regular thing that I will do. Now, I don't do it publicly, mm-hmm. but to reach out to them in a private manner and say, I saw this, I'm concerned for you, I love you, is there anything I can do? Mm-hmm. And then I always end that conversation, because it's almost always, thanks, but no. And I end that with, I just want to make sure you have my number in case you need something. Mm-hmm. Okay? Versus trying to correct them, okay. So again, start with intent. Why am I engaging in this? Am I engaging it so that my political candidate is clearly superior to theirs? Okay. But if we're going to do so unlovingly and unkindly, that's a Pyrrhic victory, that we have not given glory to Christ in this, and we have sacrificed that. And if we're trying to engage in that, to yell, to argue, and you're right, people's online audacity is infinitely larger than what they would do in person. So here's my thought on this. If you want to be someone who's reflecting Christ, and you want to say, social media is my battleground, I'm going to argue against that. I'm going to respectfully disagree. If you want to say, I want to be a positive influence on social media, right? That's wonderful. And if you say, to post publicly, I love you, so glad things are going well, and then you private message them and say, hey, I love you, I'm worried about. Do not engage in foolish online behavior to try to prove yourself right. It's not beneficial to anyone.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing you say today, as we talk about the art of disagreement, it all boils down to, what is your intention? If your intention is to hear the other person out, whether or not you agree with them, or whether or not you arrive at the end of the conversation seeing eye to eye, is your heart to love and honor them? And then part 2 is, if you have people in your life that you know that they are coming from an unhealthy place where their only intention is to start an argument, we have full permission and loving boundaries to say, this is not a topic I will talk to you about.
Absolutely. And in all things, honor Christ. In all things, we become all things to all people so that some might be saved. And that includes what we choose to engage in when we disagree and how we choose to disagree.
Yep. Well, Kris, we may disagree. Just kidding. We may disagree in a lot of things, but I agree that you're an excellent guest to have on our podcast, and our listeners are always blessed by when you're here. So thank you guys for listening. Kris, thanks for being here, and we'll see you next week. Thanks for listening to Tuesday Talks with Shawnee Alliance Church. Let us know your thoughts by leaving a review, and be sure to subscribe, rate, and share. If you would like to join our conversation on social media, be sure to use the hashtag TuesdayTalksWithSAC. Thanks for listening to this week's episode, and we look forward to seeing you again next week.